Mizutsune?
No, you not Zutsune, you cotton.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, Mizutsune has returned to the series in Monster Hunter Wilds Title Update 1, and this is by far the most interesting base version of the monster that we've seen, with borrowed bits from the Soulseer Mizutsune Deviant, interesting moves from a mix of the different Mizutsune versions' movesets, new moves, and new full-on bubble shapes too, and of course it has a couple of turf wars in Wilds 2, as well as some fun idle animation stuff too that I want to show you as well. On top of that, Tempered Mizutsune is an 8-star quest, and its damage is absolutely pumped through the roof compared to pretty much everything else in the game. So we'll go over some tips and tricks to help you deal with it too. Starting off then, let's talk about how the monster generally works, especially as there is some nuance to it in Wilds. Mizutsune isn't too challenging in its base version, but when tempered, it is one of the only 8-star quests in the game, and the difficulty matches that because of the actual damage output, if nothing else, being capable of fully one-shotting with its strongest moves, especially if you have Major Bubble Blight, as you actually take more damage if you have Major Bubble Blight as a debuff in Monster Hunter Wilds. As far as how Bubble Blight works in general, you will get minor Bubble Blight after you first get hit by a bubble, but if you get hit by another bubble, you will get Major Bubble Blight, which makes you start sliding around, it makes you fall on the ground for longer after you get hit by an attack, and it makes you take more damage. The biggest mechanic to be aware of with Mizutsune is what I'm going to be calling Soulseer mode, as it is a clear homage to Soulseer Mizutsune, the deviant from Generations Ultimate, which is a blinded Mizutsune with a connection to its bubbles, essentially using their bubbles to locate you and then attack based on that information, which is a really cool concept, and they brought this into the base version of Mizutsune in Wilds, and it works in a really cool way, honestly. The actual trigger mechanism for this seems to be a mix of health percentage and part condition and enrage. Specifically, Mizutsune will not enter Soulseer mode unless you get the first head part break, because it is supposed to represent damage to his eyes. If you get the first head part break, then Soulseer mode can happen, but it won't unless you have damaged the monster enough, and if the monster enrages. For standard Mizutsune, based on the overall kill time, I would say this is around 40% health is a rough estimation when this can start happening, whereas with tempered Mizutsune, this was as high as like 80% of its health-ish. Like if you break the head early on in tempered Mizutsune, it will spend the majority of the fight against you in Soulseer mode. But conversely, I did a tempered Mizutsune, doing my best to never attack any part of the front half of the body at all, sticking to the tail and back legs as much as I could. I hit the head maybe 3 or 4 times total through the hunt, but no part break on the head. I got the whole way through the quest without ever seeing Soulseer mode. I got to Skull and I could have captured it early, but I wanted to see if I could go it the whole way through to death without breaking the head and without proccing the special mode. So I slowly pecked away at its back half, never getting the head part break and never having this special mode trigger. The other thing that it requires, by the way, just so you know, is when the monster enrages. If the monster's not enraged, it will not have the glowing blue eye, but even once all the other conditions are met, it needs to enrage and then it will be Soulseer while it is such. What this mode actually seems to do for the monster is make it a little bit faster, a little bit more aggressive. It's like a super enrage, and it also seems to increase its damage and make it just more likely to use its biggest, most dangerous attacks, and increasing the frequency of the blue flame bubbles, the explosive ones. Mizutsune has 4 kinds of bubbles that it will throw out in Wilds that it will create with its attacks. The standard neutral bubbles you will see the most, the blue bubbles, which are flaming and will explode and give you fire blight if they hit you, and these will start to happen as you progress the fight, whether you hit Soulseer mode or not. There are 2 more types of bubbles as well, and these are actually good for the player, being red bubbles, which you can see occasionally, and this will give you a slight attack boost if they pop on you, or if you cut them open in front of you, or block them, stuff like that, as long as you're standing in the bubble juices when it pops, like with a Vigor Wasp. Speaking of Vigor Wasps, the last bubble type are the green bubbles. These will heal you if you're standing in the juices, just like a Vigor Wasp. Pop the bubble and stand in the juices, and you'll get a small heal. Being aware of green and red bubbles in itself is a pretty solid way to make the fight a little bit easier for yourself when they actually pop up. Similar useful tricks are, while the claws are low damage hit zones for raw attack, they are relatively decent elemental hit zones, and breaking a claw while the monster is not enraged at least will cause a knockdown. So if you are using an elemental build, it may be worth pushing damage into a claw on occasion to get these knockdowns to happen. And this can also cause Mizutsune to start falling over during certain attacks as it loses its grip while sliding, similar to flying monsters when you break a wing. Severing the tail of Mizutsune causes the monster to lose a lot of range on its tail-based attacks, which are some of its strongest ones, and you have to first break the tail before you can then sever it. It is a two-stage part break. This, combined with Soulseer mode being tied to the head part breaks, means if you want an easier, more comfortable Mizutsune hunt, focus on the tail and avoid the head as much as possible. That said, when talking about actual part weakness, Mizutsune's head is its weakest body part to your damage by a massive amount for severing and blunt damage types, and for range damage, it is tied to weakness with the actual fins that are up on its back. So if you want quick, efficient hunts, if you want to do the most damage possible to Mizutsune, you want to stick to the head as much as you can, or the back fins for ranged weapons. This means that you will get Soulseer mode as early as possible in the fight for the most part, so be ready for that to happen. But it also means the fight will be over faster, because the damage you do to the head is significantly higher than to any other part of the monster. So it is a trade-off of damage for danger, a real sort of choose-your-own-adventure monster. As for element weaknesses, it is relatively equally weak to thunder and dragon, with it being slightly weaker to thunder on the head, hind legs, torso, tail, and the dorsal fin up on the back, but slightly weaker to dragon on the front legs, not the claws, but the legs themselves, so it depends on what you're actually aiming for. But generally, I definitely lean towards thunder, because they are very equivalent, so if you have a dragon weapon, you can use it, but if you want to maximize element damage, you're going to want to focus on thunder more. As for statuses, Mizutsune is perfectly 2-star weak across the board to poison, sleep, paralysis, blast, stun, and exhaust, and can be flashed and trapped just fine. I've also heard some people saying if you flash Mizutsune enough times, it will turn Soulseer mode, even without damaging the head at all. But I sat around for about 5-10 minutes straight, just flashing Mizutsune on repeat, feeling like an absolute bully, went to the point that flashes had no effect on the monster anymore, and it didn't do anything. I reached maximum flash resistance, so if that is a thing, if flashing them, purely just flashing them, can turn them into Soulseer mode, it takes an unreasonable amount of flashing, and you'll never encounter that naturally. The other rumor that I've heard about Mizutsune is that it becomes flash resistant or flash immune when it hits Soulseer mode as part of the fight, or as it gets lower health to represent Soulseer Mizutsune being blind. This doesn't seem to be the case at all. If I wait for my first flash on the monster until it is in Soulseer mode already and heavily injured, it doesn't have reduced effectiveness at all, it's just a normal flash, so that's completely debunked. Sadly, I think that would have been a cool idea if they did it, but they didn't. That said, some fun stuff that Mizutsune does do real quick, it has some idle animations if you follow it around without getting it actually involved in combat. One of them here just sort of slides around and then blows an absolutely gigantic bubble above its head just sort of passively, and then it pops. It's just really cute, just sort of hanging around and playing with its bubbles. And then the other one that I believe can be an idle animation, but it can also happen during the fight, specifically if you exhaust Mizutsune and get it fatigued on the Scarlet Forest. It has a chance of going up to zone 17 at the top, and then popping into the water where the fish are, and actually going fishing. It has a really neat animation for this where it creates like a net of bubbles to trap the fish in the middle. They just jump straight up, and then Mizutsune jumps straight up even higher to catch them in its mouth. It's really neat, it's a really cool animation, and I love seeing this type of just ecology thing in the game properly. Like, this is just, hey, this is how Mizutsune eat. This is how they catch food. They're basically like dolphins, and it's just an extra animation that a bunch of players may well never see if you don't go out of your way to. Speaking of which, for those who don't already know, Mizutsune gets a lot more vibrantly colored when enraged, and it gets super desaturated when exhausted, and it's really distinct in wilds, which is pretty fun to see too. As well, while we are on the subject of fun animations, Mizutsune actually has 2 turf wars as of the time of its introduction. One of them is with duna, the apex of the Scarlet Forest, and I'll just let that play out for you to enjoy. Mizutsune does a bunch of dodging around, essentially just trying not to get crushed, then jumps on top of duna, which is pretty cool, and it tries to get some damage into sort of like clawing at the head or something, but then duna just rips him off and body slams him with all of his weight, showing him who is the boss around here. Honestly, it almost feels like Mizutsune is just really horny, and duna's like, not right now. That said, this is a really cool turf war. It makes it feel like Mizutsune is a little bit outclassed, but it really puts some respect on duna's name. For the second turf war, this is just the classic standard arkveld turf war animation. They will fight just with whatever random attacks they choose, and if arkveld gets a knockdown on Mizutsune, he will walk up to him, then the turf war notification will pop up, he will wrap his chains around Mizutsune and give him the big suck like he does to most of the rest of the roster. Theoretically, doing it to Mizutsune though should clean him up a little bit by sending soap through his system directly after sucking in energy from, all the much dirtier monsters he normally interacts with. That said, it's worth mentioning that Mizutsune as a base will spawn in the Scarlet Scarlet Forest mainly, but tempered Mizutsune can also spawn in the ruins of Wyvria, which is a very fun visual backdrop for the beautiful shiny coloring of tempered Mizutsune, and it makes it feel like it's making milk soap instead of normal soap too. And honestly, on that note, a guardian Mizutsune in the future, if they added it to the game, that could make like milk bubbles that interact with elements, like chain exploding Soulseer bubbles into the Wilk bubbles, would be absolutely incredible as a concept. And I hope I just shared like a brainwave with someone at Capcom, because I really want that to exist in the future. As far as other ways to make the quest a bit easier then, there are tons of environmental traps in the Scarlet Forest if you have the monster spawn there, especially the waterfall trap if it goes to zone 15, which is a ton of free damage, so make sure to take advantage of all of that. As well, you can take advantage of other monsters just existing, as monsters do a pretty substantial amount of damage to each other. If you are a guard heavy weapon, then you should have a pretty good time on this fight. Honestly, Mizutsune is super guardable, super good timings and animations for guard weapons. For evasion heavy weapons, it should be similar if you have some evade window, just get good at actually dodging the timing of the attacks. But if you are trying to just raw reposition to avoid damage, that's when it becomes tougher with Mizutsune. For most of its actual bubble attacks, there will be clear spaces between them to move through, except for like the long sausage bubble, and it's worth noting that you can destroy bubbles before they actually connect with you by hitting them with a melee attack in front of you, or hitting them with ranged attacks from a distance if you use a ranged weapon, or slinger ammo. For the water beams, the main trick once you recognize the startup animation for this is to just wait to dodge away until right before it fires the beam, as the tracking will never hit you if you do this and dodge perfectly horizontal. For guard weapons, if you guard once, the rest of the beam can't hurt you, so you can just guard at the start and then walk up towards the monster to beat it in the face. When Mizutsune is enraged, it will always follow the straight line water beam with an arcing, like cone shape in front of it water beam, so always try to move towards the head after avoiding the first beam to make it easier to avoid the second. If Mizutsune looks like it is winding up a big bubble pop, roll sideways. This is a relatively small but very potent explosion right in front of its head, which one roll of distance will actually clear safely even without evade extender. As for most of its physical attacks, the majority of it are pretty easy to dodge with sideways rolls rather than forward or backward rolls, and Mizutsune has a lot of straight line attacks directly aimed at you. Either bubbles that come forward in a straight line, body slams where it uses its tail to extend lengthwise, straightforward water beams, so left and right dodges are your best general roll directions, but that doesn't apply to all attacks. If Mizutsune curls up, it's about to do a spinning tail attack, which is easiest to dodge by doing one singular roll backwards, and then you can just keep up the offense. Mizutsune also has a double claw slam where it will do one with each claw back to back. It will always alternate which claw it does with these slams, so if it starts with the left claw slam, the second will always be the right claw slam and vice versa. It also has a triple flip combo that it does for lots of tail damage and trying to sneak around behind you, mostly just dodge around horizontally as mentioned earlier. And the lock-on camera with focus mode can actually be your friend when it does this kind of movement too. Aside from this, tempered Mizutsune is the one causing people proper trouble, and the best tip that I can give you for this is to pay attention to the purple stars when choosing your quest. The difference between 3 purple star tempered Mizutsune and 5 purple star tempered Mizutsune is the difference between being one-shottable to its biggest attacks and surviving them with enough health to heal and get back in the fight. So if you want easier hunts against this monster, even the tempered one, look to the purple stars. As far as collecting parts for this monster, if you want water orbs, the gem for Mizutsune, the best way to get them is to keep resting to try and get Mizutsune quests and investigations with a guaranteed gem reward, as these do exist. Otherwise, you want to cut the tail off fully when fighting the monster and have as many bonus carves as possible for carving the tail, which means either the Azu's Feast or the Azu's Meal that you can have in the Grand Hub for the Carver Meal bonus, which gives you a chance at extra carves. Carving the tail has a 6% chance at giving you the Water Orb gem, which is much higher than your chances from target rewards or from regular corpse carves, and this Feast Meal skill can give you up to 2 bonus carves on the tail, which gives you a way better shot than otherwise, and it gives you up to 2 bonus carves on the body too if you fully kill it, so it's pretty good in general. For other parts, look for what you're after, figure out what it comes from. For stuff like the claws, you obviously want to break the claws. For fins, you want to break the head and the back, so on and so forth. That pretty much does it then for Mizutsune, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this, and hopefully you either learned something new about the monster or just saw something that you find interesting about Mizutsune within this, as I wanted to go as in-depth as possible on a monster that I'm personally a really big fan of coming back, and what I believe is its best form yet. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.